Right? Thank you for always getting the music so perfect, all of you. And the two that y'all sang today, I release and I let go, and amazing things are a huge part of my spiritual life, both of those songs. And don't you love how music just helps you grow? You listen to the same songs over and over again, and I remember at the time listening to those songs and feeling so lost in my life. And those songs just brought me back to center, and they kept bringing me back to center. So thank you for that. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Okay. So as you guys know, I was raised Catholic, right? I've told y'all that before many times. And for Catholics, during the Lenten season, which we are in right now, it is very common to ask your Catholic friends and family, what are you giving up for Lent? Right? Very common, right? And know that what you're giving up for Lent is a sacrifice, right? It's not supposed to be easy because you're duplicating or living into or understanding the sacrifice that Jesus made. That's the Catholic understanding. So I would give up chocolate because that's a great sacrifice, akin to Jesus' sacrifice. I am quite sure if you're a really good Catholic, you would give up TV. Anybody do that? I know I didn't. I did not do that. But chocolate was a big one for me. Chocolate was a big one. So, and I poke fun of that and know that I very much honor my Catholic upbringing and the faith. There's so much good I got from it. And I read recently, that Pope Francis, who y'all know is the head of the Catholic Church, he's been actually recovering from pneumonia for 5 weeks now, I believe, and out of danger is what I hear. And I remember when Theo was in the hospital, he said, "How is the Pope doing?" Because I know, well, we both were reading the news and we remembered, and Pope Francis is someone who I very much honor his message of just love and inclusivity and living the Christ life. So, excuse me. He has a very strong view on what Lent should be, and I want to read that to you. He says that we live in this moment of globalization of indifference. What he says is whenever our interior life becomes caught up in its own interests and concerns, there's no longer room for others, no place for the poor. God's voice is no longer heard, the quiet joy of his love is no longer felt, and the desire to do good fades. And he says that we end up being incapable of feeling compassion. That's what he writes. And so for him, what he says is Lent comes providentially to reawaken us, to shake us from our lethargy. I'm going to read that again. Lent comes providentially to reawaken us, to shake us from our lethargy. How does that feel? Right? Yes, challenging, right? And that is so much the spiritual practice. It's awakening and a reawakening, and an awakening and a reawakening. And it takes patience to do that practice. And what he means by lethargy, or what I take that to understand is, as you know, is lethargy is not having energy, right? Being unmotivated. But also, like a spiritual lethargy, I think of it as a lower consciousness, or not holding the highest consciousness. Does that make sense? You're just not holding the highest consciousness, not being awake to the good, to God, to how it's working in your life, not being awake to working on those attributes of peace and compassion. And when you're not awake to it, are you going to help others be awake to it? Or are you going to be awake to other people's suffering? Right? Probably not. So one of the things that I kind of take to task is when he says the idea of whenever our interior lives becomes caught up in its own interests and concerns, there's no longer room for others. Now, I completely agree with that, but I also believe that people are inherently good, that we all have sacred worth. And I believe that so often when we are stuck in that interior life or no concern for others, it's because we're stuck in woundedness. Would you not agree? because we're stuck in trauma, or we're stuck in living in a culture and an economy that tells us we have to always be busy, right? Or we have to, or this is what success means, whatever that is. Or there isn't time for rest because you're so busy hustling. Yeah, I know I can do that. Definitely I can do that. And then I'm no good for anybody. You know, it's exactly what the flight attendants tell us. You put your oxygen mask on first, and then you put it on the next person, right? Who is that hard? Does anyone have a trouble putting it on first for themselves? Anybody? Yeah, I have a hard time with putting it on myself first. I think I'm supposed to put it on everybody else and then myself, and that's not what works. So what I want to talk about this morning is the well-watered life. And I want that to be our Lenten practice, the well-watered life. So what does that mean for you, to have a well-watered life? You can think about the metaphor of a garden. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a gardener, but at all. But I think I know some things about a garden. Like, you set an intention, right? Like, for example, what am I going to grow, right? Jackie, you're here. We have other people's. Donna. Who else did that? The garden work. Travis. Set an intention. Am I going to grow food? Do I want to attract butterflies? Do I want to attract birds, right? You set your intention of what that garden is. So set our intention. One of the things that I do to keep a well-watered life is pray. That's my foundational practice, is my time in prayer, my time in meditation, my time in the silence. First thing in the morning, that is what I do. And let that prayer keep me throughout my day, whatever that practice is. So set an intention. Second, trust. Trust. Trusting that your soil is rich and good, right? Trusting that sunlight will definitely be there for the garden. And if it isn't, trusting discernment and wisdom, right? Maybe I am watering it too much, which is what I tend to do, which is why I don't garden. I will water things too much. Or, trusting that if you have to move a plant, I remember my mother is an excellent gardener. She would recognize, oh yeah, no, that's getting too much light. Let me put it over here in the shade. So trusting. So, and for us, it's trusting truth, right? Trusting that there is one God, trusting that God is the very movement of my life. That's a big one, right? And in that, there's always peace. Always. Even when I don't feel it, if I go deeper down, I know that's peace. So that's the trusting part. And then the garden metaphor is the following through, right? Following through, continuing the practice, continuing to water the garden, continuing to do my prayers, continuing to rest. I know that rest is also a piece that I need, that we all need. Continuing to drink water, whatever that is, that's how we live the well-watered life. So that's what I'm asking for us to do for Lent. Not give up chocolate unless you want to, right? That's always what you can do. But thinking about for yourself, what does it mean for me to be well-watered? Because what I know is that once all of us live a well-watered life, then we're able to give, right? We're able to awaken and reawaken. And so I have an affirmation for us, and it's changed, I think. During this Lenten season, I live a well-watered life. Just take that in. During this Lenten season, I live a well-watered life. And just breathe into that, and just, what does that mean for you? What do you need to live a well-watered life? And is it something that you can inner resource or something that you need help with? So during this season, I live a well-watered life. And so that means that you set an intention, you trust truth, and you follow through. How does that feel? Easy, right? Set an intention, trust truth, follow through. Okay, I want to look at that, and y'all probably know what story I'm going to talk to y'all about. Since I've used the metaphor of the garden, I'm sure you know that I'm going to talk about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Am I right? Y'all knew I was going there. I know y'all did. So let me first read this, and then I want to I want us to unpack it. So this is before his crucifixion. Y'all know that, right? He goes to the Garden of Gethsemane before the crucifixion, after his Passover meal. The meal that we see so often where he's sitting down with the disciples, that's the Passover meal. And then before the crucifixion, he goes to the garden. So let me read it to you. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, that was John and James, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So, could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Whew, that's a lot. That's a lot, right? So there's so much to unpack, but one of the early things I want to tell you is that Gethsemane, that's a Greek word that means oil press. Do you know that? It means oil press. And so it was a place thought to be situated at the base of Mount Olives, and the reason it was called oil press is that the idea was there was something there so that they would press oil, right, from the olives. So you would press the flesh and come out oil. So think about that. That's also a metaphor for Jesus, right? Because what was Jesus but Word made flesh, right? God made flesh. And so what you see in the Garden of Gethsemane, what you see is human, right? Jesus as human struggling. Jesus as human in despair, sorrowful, knowing that he has been betrayed, in anguish, knowing that he is being taken to be crucified, right? And so what he says is, "Let this cup not be mine," right? Let this not happen to me. Let this not happen to me. You know, exactly like James Dillett Freeman. I would imagine the journal was very much, "I don't want this cup. I don't want this cup for me and my wife. I don't want this." And so he says it 3 times, and there's something about that 3 times. That 3 times meant completion. So by the time he comes to the 3rd time, he is no longer human flesh. He is in acceptance, right? He is in surrender. Not my will, but your will. Not my will, but your will. And that is one of the, I don't know, in so many ways, that's like our foundational prayer, right? That's the foundational prayer, that it's not my small need or want or what I think it is, but it's that living with that one will, because when you choose to live in that one will, peace will come, right? Peace will come, and it did come for him. Now, the other pieces to talk about were the disciples. What were they doing? Exactly. What does Pope Francis say? Yeah. That we are asleep. Exactly. Thank you. That's what Pope Francis is saying. We are like the disciples asleep, right? We are asleep. We are lethargic. meaning we're not motivated, we have no energy, and we're living in low consciousness. And that's what the disciples were doing, right? That's what that idea of sleeping meant. It was the metaphor for they were not holding the high consciousness that Jesus was holding. They were not holding it. So he set his intention, right? His intention was to pray. His intention was to go to Garden of Gethsemane. And his intention was, I will go pray, watch over me, right? I will go pray, watch over me. So it's when we say, I said to Thomas before I came up stage, please pray for me. Same thing. I will pray, go watch over me. And then, what does he do? He trusts the truth, right? When he says, not my will, but your will. Not mine, but yours. That's trusting the truth. And then he follows through. Rise, let us be going. That's the follow through, right? That's the rinse and repeat. That's the piece that we keep doing. We awaken, we reawaken, awaken, reawaken. So I would like to share a little bit about my own prayer life. I've probably shared quite a bit already, so bear with me. I'm so grateful that I inherited my faith from my mom. So grateful that I was raised with a prayerful person because I got to see what that practice looked like. And as I was a child, she was praying the rosary. You know, she would go into her room with her rosary and pray her rosary. She did it every day. As I got older and I left the house, I would call her, and my mom has this gift where she knows it's me. You know, she's like, that ring sounds, I knew that ring was you. So always, it sounds like you. I know that ring. So she'd answer the phone and say, I'm praying the rosary. I'll call you back. And she'd hang up but she knew it was me, so she'd have to do that, right? So that's what I was raised with. And then I went into Unity, and I got introduced to affirmative prayer, which still is the prayer I do. And the affirmative prayer is that prayer of it's not begging, it's not beseeching, it's that prayer of holding that consciousness of the highest, right? Holding that highest consciousness. And I took classes, and I read the Daily Word. The Daily Word is still a part of my life. Another thing is journaling. I journal a lot, and I journal affirmations. And I certainly journal in the morning that affirmation that I know is going to support me through the day, because when I am lethargic, when I go to sleep, then I can go back to whatever that affirmation is. And just to tell you how much it's a practice, I am still practicing every day. And yesterday was one of those days that I was in deep practice. My son asked to be dropped off at the rodeo on a Saturday to go meet with his friends. And so my husband like, oh, of course, we'll do that. Forgetting that Saturday is going to be about the busiest day that you can be dropped off, right? It is the busiest day. We have since learned. So we figured out where to drop him off, which, by the way, there is no good place to be dropped off at the rodeo. There just isn't. I know, Terry, I needed to be calling you, my project manager. There's no place to be dropped off. So we found one place and said, okay, right here and the bridge. That's where we decided, okay. Then we took off. He knew where he was going to meet his friends. We knew when we would pick him up. So we go back to pick him up. Where we think we're going to pick him up, that road is now closed. And there's no road near it. So you can imagine a mother's heart, how it feels. Because in my mind, he's not the 16-year-old who's capable of taking care of himself, has a phone, knows what's going on. He's a toddler lost at the rodeo. That's where my mind was. I have a toddler lost at the rodeo, and I'm never going to find him, right? Oh, my goodness. Thankfully, I have a patient, Thomas, in my life, and thankfully, I have a practice, right? So I used my practice as best I could, but it wasn't working very well. So we finally get a hold of him and figure out a way, and I just say to Thomas, I got to get out of the car. That's it. I'm going to walk to him. I got to get out of the car because I can't think, right? It's that lethargy. Like, I could not use really that thing, and Thomas is trying to say to me several times, walk 2 blocks that way, pick him up, walk 2 blocks back. 2 blocks that way, 2 blocks back. Do you think that's, no, not getting in my head. Not getting in my head. So I'm walking to, and I'm like, 2 blocks. How do I know what's 2 blocks? Like nothing. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like nothing, like it's not working. So I call him and I'm like, call Theo, where are you? And the wind yesterday, oh my gosh. So we couldn't hear each other. Okay, just text me. Where are you? Where are you? He's like, I promise you, you go up the bridge, you won't miss me. I promise you, you're not going to miss me, right? So then I have to walk up these stairs to walk up the bridge, and my heart is pouncing. And an older person looks at me and said, I had a hard time too. And I'm like, y'all, I'm having a hard time because I'm scared I'm not going to get my kid. So I didn't even have words for a prayer. I did not even have words. But what I did is I put my hand on my heart. Right? I put my hand on my heart. It's like, here's my still point. Here's my knowing. I'm going to find him. He is safe. I'm going to find him. He is safe. Those were the words, right? In my heart here. So I finally get up to the stairs. And again, I don't see him. And then finally I saw him. But do you think I walked 2 blocks back the way Thomas asked me to? No, I didn't. I did not. It took Thomas probably 30 minutes to find, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Oh my goodness. Okay, an hour. We waited in a parking lot for an hour for him to find us. But I found him. He found us, and we're here. Right? All of that to say, it's a practice. It's a practice. It's an awakening, and it's a reawakening, and it's awakening, and it's a reawakening. So I want to go back to where I started, and that is Lent comes providentially to awaken us, to shake us from our lethargy. And so for this Lenten season, where in your life do you need to be reawakened? Where in your life do you need to be shaken from lethargy? And also, are you willing to commit to reawakening? Because know that when you become awakened, we are all going to be awakened. And that's our deepest prayer, right? Amen. Know that I love you all so much. I support you and I encourage you.